All right, strap in, everyone. Today we are going deep into the world of machine learning.
Deep.
Specifically, gradient descent.
Oh, yeah.
We want to really understand
Yeah.
how it works. So we went straight to the source.
Nice.
MIT OpenCourseWare lectures on YouTube.
Cool.
And we found some pretty surprising things along the way, so we can't wait to share them with you.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Gradient descent is like the engine.
It really is.
Under the hood of so many models.
Yeah.
From like simple linear regression
Yeah.
to those complex neural networks everyone's talking about.
Everywhere. They're everywhere.
They really are.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's break it down.
Okay.
What is gradient descent?
Okay.
In the simplest terms.
Imagine you're trying to find the lowest point in a valley, but it's super foggy. You can only feel the slope of the ground beneath your feet.
Okay.
So you take a step in the direction where the ground slopes downward.
Okay, so
that's essentially what gradient descent does.
Okay, so in the machine learning world, the valley is some kind of function.
Yeah.
We're trying to minimize.
Exactly.
What exactly does that function represent?
It often represents the errors our model is making. The lower the value of the function, the fewer errors.
Right.
The slope is the gradient.
I see.
Which points us in the direction of the steepest increase.
Right.
Since we want to minimize errors, we move in the opposite direction of the gradient.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But there was this example in the MIT lecture.
Oh, yeah.
That really stuck with me.
Okay.
The bowl-shaped function.
Oh, yeah.
It was more of like an elongated oval, really. They showed that even when taking the steepest path down, it still took a long time.
It did, yeah.
To reach the bottom.
Yeah.
Why was that?
That's a great illustration of the concept of condition number.
Condition number?
Yes. Essentially, it's the ratio between the largest and smallest values in the function.
Okay.
When the condition number is large, think of it like a very steep and narrow valley.
Oh, okay.
Gradient descent tends to overshoot, bouncing back and forth along the narrow walls.
Right.
And that makes it...
So it's going back and forth and back and forth.
Exactly. Slow to converge.
Making it slow. So a large condition number basically translates to longer training time.
Exactly.
For our model.
Yes.
That's definitely something I'll keep in mind.
Good takeaway.
Now, in the lecture, they introduced this idea of exact line search to calculate each step.
Right.
Meaning they found like the absolute best step size.
At each iteration.
At each iteration. And it was still slow. So why is that example?
That's such a good question.
So important.
Because it highlights how much the shape of that function and by extension the condition number matters. It's like a difficulty setting for your machine learning problem. If you have a high condition number, you know it's going to be a tougher climb.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But then they introduced stochastic gradient descent.
Yeah.
Where instead of using all the data, they randomly sample just a small batch.
A small batch.
Of data points to calculate the gradient.
Right.
I have to admit, that sounds a bit like cutting corners.
It does at first glance. You'd think using only a tiny fraction of the data would lead to really inaccurate estimates.
Right. Wouldn't all that noise
it would seem that way.
Make the training process unreliable?
Yeah.
How can we be sure we're converging to a good solution?
That's where the magic comes in.
Okay.
While each step in stochastic gradient descent might be a little off. On average, it still points us in the right direction. Technically, we call these unbiased estimates.
Unbiased estimates.
Yeah, think of it like taking a series of slightly wrong turns that ultimately lead you to your destination.
So we're sacrificing,
in a way,
precision for speed.
Exactly.
But in a way that benefits the model.
Yeah.
Its ability to generalize.
Yeah.
That's pretty
counterintuitive.
Counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But they said it's pretty much the only way
it is,
we can deal with those massive data sets.
Those huge data sets,
we see in machine learning these days.
Right.
How does that work?
Processing all the data every time would be computationally expensive and time-consuming. Stochastic gradient descent allows us to work with those huge data sets efficiently. And while we get some noise, remember that in machine learning, A bit of noise
Yeah.
can actually be a good thing.
How so?
Well, it can help our models generalize better
Oh.
to new data.
Okay.
It prevents them from getting too fixated on the specific details of the training data and helps them learn more general patterns.
More general patterns.
Yeah, that's something we call
Okay.
the region of confusion.
Region of confusion.
Yeah, a sort of blurry zone.
Okay.
Around the optimal solution.
So instead of getting stuck in that blurry zone,
exactly,
the randomness
helps us bounce around.
Yes. And potentially even find a better solution.
Exactly. It's like shaking up a snow globe.
Ah.
Things might seem chaotic at first, but ultimately, those flakes settle into a beautiful new pattern.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. This is all starting to make sense. But there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Backpropagation.
Backpropagation, right?
Honestly, every time I hear that word, my brain just goes, chain rule.
Yeah.
Derivatives.
Yeah. Oh, no. I hear you.
Help.
It can sound intimidating, but the idea behind backpropagation is actually quite elegant.
Okay.
Remember to use gradient descent.
Right.
We need those partial derivatives to calculate the gradient of our function. But with deep learning, those functions
they can get
incredibly complex.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
Those deep neural networks with all those layers and interconnected nodes, each doing their own calculations.
Right.
Just thinking about calculating all those derivatives.
That's a lot.
Makes my head spin.
And that's precisely where backpropagation comes in.
Okay.
It's an algorithm that uses the chain rule from calculus, but it applies it in reverse to efficiently compute those gradients.
In reverse, okay.
So instead of starting at the input and moving forward, we begin at the output and work our way backward through the network.
So we go backwards. I always struggled with the chain rule back in calculus class.
Calculus is tough.
But seeing it applied in backpropagation, it suddenly clicks.
Yeah.
It's like this beautifully choreographed dance of derivatives.
It really is.
What's the advantage of doing it in reverse?
It's all about efficiency.
Okay.
If we use the chain rule directly going forward, step by step, we'd end up recalculating many intermediate values.
Oh.
It would be like taking the scenic route. When there's a much faster highway.
So backpropagation is like taking the express lane.
Exactly.
Through that maze of calculation.
Through that maze.
Okay.
It cleverly organizes the computations. Using a computational graph that breaks down the function into smaller, more manageable pieces. And as we calculate, we store all those intermediate derivatives along the way. Here's the kicker. Many of those intermediate derivatives can be reused to compute other partial derivatives.
So instead of retracing our steps every time we're building a map.
We're building a map as we go.
Yeah. That's really smart.
It is a pretty cool algorithm.
That map, the computational graph, allows us to compute gradients for many variables with only a small increase.
Much more efficient.
In computational time compared to calculating.
Way more efficient.
Just one derivative.
Yeah.
You know, this reminds me of something else they mentioned in the lecture, matrix multiplication.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, the order in which you multiply matrices can dramatically change.
It can.
How long it takes.
Wild.
Oh.
That's an excellent connection. It highlights how seemingly straightforward calculations can have hidden depths and efficiencies, just like backpropagation.
Just like backpropagation?
It's all about finding those shortcuts within the math itself.
It really is fascinating.
It is.
How much optimization
it is really cool.
Goes into making these machine learning algorithms work.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, why does this combination of stochastic gradient descent and backpropagation work so well for training deep neural networks?
It's a great question.
The lecture didn't really go into the why.
That's one of the big mysteries. In deep learning research, we know it works incredibly well in practice, but the theoretical understanding of why this combination is so effective is still an ongoing area.
So we figured out the how.
We have.
But the why is still a bit of a black box.
It is,
That's actually quite exciting.
It is.
There's still so much to discover.
There really is.
In this field.
Absolutely.
Unveiling the theoretical underpinnings of why stochastic gradient descent and backpropagation work so well for deep learning could lead to
all sorts of things.
Even more powerful algorithms in the future.
Absolutely.
So to all our listeners out there, if you're feeling inspired to delve deeper into this mystery, we've included links to the MIT lectures and other resources.
Great resources.
In the show notes. A great way to solidify your understanding is to look at the actual code implementation.
The code.
Of these algorithms. Seeing the math come to life in code can be a truly aha. Well, now that we've covered the nitty-gritty of gradient descent, let's zoom out a bit.
Okay.
What are some of the broader implications?
That's a great question.
Of all this for the future of machine learning?
Okay.
Where do I see
the field heading?
Yeah.
That's a fantastic question, I think.
It's amazing to think we're still just scratching the surface with deep learning. But all this talk about algorithms and optimization, I have to ask, where does the human element fit into all of this?
That's a really important point. As powerful as these algorithms are, they're still just tools. It's up to us humans to define the problems, choose the right tools, and interpret the results.
So even though we're talking about machine learning, it's not like we can just sit back and let the machines do all the thinking.
Exactly. There's a lot of human ingenuity and creativity involved in designing these models and applying them to real-world problems. And as we push the boundaries of what's possible with AI, ethical considerations become even more important.
Speaking of ethics, I've heard some concerns about potential biases creeping into these algorithms. Since they're trained on data, could they end up reflecting existing biases in that data?
That's a valid concern. If the data we use to train our models contains biases, those biases can be amplified by the algorithms. It's crucial to be aware of this and to actively work towards mitigating bias in both the data and the models themselves.
So it's not just about making these algorithms powerful, but also making sure they're fair and responsible.
Absolutely. As we entrust more and more decisions to AI systems, we need to ensure that they're aligned with our values and don't perpetuate harmful biases. It's an ongoing challenge and an area where we need to be constantly vigilant.
This has been such an insightful deep dive into gradient descent. We've gone from feeling lost in the fog to having a pretty clear understanding of how this fundamental algorithm works and its implications for machine learning.
It's been a pleasure to unpack these concepts with you. Hopefully our listeners now have a deeper appreciation for the elegance and power of gradient descent and perhaps even some inspiration to explore this field further.
To wrap things up, let's recap some of the key takeaways for our listeners. We learned that gradient descent is like a compass, guiding us towards the optimal solution in a complex landscape. We discovered how the condition number can affect the speed of training and how stochastic gradient descent uses a bit of randomness to efficiently tackle massive datasets.
And who can forget the magic of backpropagation? Cleverly leveraging the chain rule to calculate those crucial gradients. It's like a symphony of derivatives working together in perfect harmony.
It really is. And even though we've uncovered the how of these algorithms, the why of their effectiveness for deep learning is still a mystery waiting to be unraveled. That's what makes this field so exciting. There's always something new to discover.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe one of our listeners will be the one to unlock the next breakthrough in machine learning.
That's it for our deep dive into gradient descent. We hope you enjoyed the journey. If you're eager to learn more, be sure to check out the links in the show notes. Until next time, keep exploring and happy learning.